The UK's economy is a real puzzle right now. On the surface, things look pretty shaky, but when you dig a little deeper, there's a very strange contradiction playing out. So today, let's try and piece this whole thing together.
And look, we're starting off with a pretty stark warning from the governor of the Bank of England himself. He calls it an acute challenge, which really sets the stage for just how high the stakes are right now.
So what does this acute challenge actually look like on the ground? Well, it's not just one single issue, but a whole bunch of economic headaches that are popping up everywhere, affecting everything from jobs to the housing market.
Okay, so the symptoms are pretty clear, right? Growth is stalling out, unemployment is starting to creep up, the property market is definitely cooling, and there's this big cloud of policy uncertainty that's just making everyone, well, cautious. But to really get a grip on this, we've got to look at the actual numbers. All right, let's dive in and read the vital signs. We're talking about the hard data that's got everyone so worried.
First up is unemployment. It's now hit 5%. And that's a big deal, kind of a psychological line in the sand. It tells us the job market is weakening, and maybe more importantly, the arrow is pointing in the wrong direction. Now, let's zoom out to the big picture, economic growth. In the last quarter, the entire economy grew by just 0.1%. That's razor thin. The economy is basically flatlining.
And if you thought that was bad, wait till you zoom in. On a monthly basis, the economy actually shrank in September. That just goes to show you how fragile this whole situation really is.
And then there's the housing market, which is often a pretty good canary in the coal mine for the wider economy. It's flashing some serious warning signs with way more sellers cutting their prices than usual. So, okay, every single sign seems to be pointing to an economy that's really struggling. And yet, this is where things get weird. When you look at people's actual personal finances, a totally different and kind of puzzling picture starts to emerge. And this brings us right to the heart of the mystery, what you could call the spending-savings gap. Because despite all those negative headlines, there's this surprising contradiction right at the heart of the UK economy. So here it is, the big question we need to answer. The data shows that, believe it or not, most households actually have more money in their pockets now than they did before the pandemic. So, if that's true, why isn't the economy just booming? Okay, get ready for this because this chart shows a pretty incredible disconnect. On the left, you see that since late 2019, real household income is up by a really healthy 5.5%. That's great. But then, look at the bar on the right. Real spending has barely budged. It's up less than 1%. That is a massive gap between what people are earning and what they're actually spending.
Right, so you've got to ask, if people aren't spending all that extra cash, where did it go? Well, it's gone straight into savings. People are stashing it away. The UK savings rate is, frankly, remarkably high right now. But why? Why are people saving so much instead of spending? Well, this chart breaks it down for us, and look at the biggest slice of the pie. The number one reason is just worry. People are building up a rainy day fund, a buffer for emergencies. That's a huge sign of economic anxiety. After that, it's simply having a higher income to save from in the first place.
Okay, so this brings us right to the core of the UK's growth puzzle. Because if the main engine of the economy, that's us, the consumer, has basically stalled out, then what on earth has been keeping things moving at all? To figure that out, we need a super quick refresh on what GDP is. It's just how we measure the size of an economy. And the most important letter in that whole formula, at least for our story today, is C. That's consumer spending. You see, C is usually the biggest piece of the economic pie. It's huge, typically around 60% of the entire UK economy. It's the main engine. And like we just saw, that main engine has pretty much sputtered to a halt, growing less than 1% in real terms over the last 6 years. So if C isn't driving growth, what is? Well, this chart gives us the absolutely astonishing answer. Pretty much all of the UK's economic growth since before the pandemic, we're talking a staggering 95% of it, has come from just one place. That G in the formula, government spending. Not from you and me, not from businesses investing, but from the government. And that, right there, reveals the fundamental problem. The UK economy is basically being propped up by the government. And look, relying this heavily on the state to create growth, that's just not sustainable in the long run. It can't last. So what's the fix? Okay, so how do you fix this? How do you get the real engine of the economy going again? Well, the idea is to shift the burden of growth away from the government and back to where it's supposed to be, with consumers and businesses.
So here's a potential path forward, and it really comes down to three key steps. First, you've got to restore confidence with clear, stable economic policy to get rid of all that uncertainty. Second, you encourage people to spend again by creating the conditions for lower interest rates. And third, you unlock business investment, because once consumers are spending, businesses will finally feel confident enough to invest. And that kicks off what you'd call a virtuous cycle of growth.
When you boil it all down, the goal is actually pretty simple. It's all about getting that C in the GDP equation, the consumer, the main engine of the whole economy, fired up and spending with confidence again. And that leaves us with one final and really critical question. We can see the problem clear as day, and we've even got a potential roadmap to fix it. But let's be honest, a real recovery, one that's built on confident consumers and businesses, that still feels like it could be a long way off. So, is the UK economy truly ready for a real recovery?